Hi, I'm Eric Goldberg with Seniors Housing Business. Welcome to the Seniors Housing Business webinar, Marketing, Moving, and Maintaining, How to Reach Optimal Occupancy. We appreciate your joining us for this hour-long webinar. I'd like to thank Moves for Seniors for sponsoring this event. And I'd like to introduce the panel moderator, Angela Green-Urbacheski of Seniors Solutions.
Thank you, Eric.
Angela?
It's such a pleasure to be with this team of really experienced folks on the phone to talk about marketing, moving, and maintaining. I work with Solutions Advisors Group. We are a strategic planning, sales, and marketing and operations consulting firm. We manage almost 20 communities, and I have the pleasure of conferring with teams across the country who are challenged in occupancy. I've spent about 20 years working in senior living communities, being a startup CCRC on the ground sales director to overseeing sales and marketing for 18 campuses and driving about 70 move-ins a month. So pleased to be with us all, and I'm going to hand it over to Julie Podowitz from Tradition Senior Living to introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Podowitz, the Chief Marketing Officer, like Angela said, at Traditions Senior Living, based here in Franklin, Tennessee. I've spent my career in sales and education, training and development, the last 15 primarily in senior living, from community sales to VP roles, also as a consultant in 46 states and Canada, with an emphasis on driving occupancy, primarily with working with people, training and coaching those sales professionals that drive our business, ongoing sales skills to mastery. Happy to be here. Jay?
Hello, my name is Jay Hibbard. I am currently Senior Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Communications for Covenant Retirement Communities. As you may be familiar with, Covenant is the 6th largest not-for-profit owner and operator. We've got 16 communities in 9 states and 4 time zones, that we like to say, and have more than 5,000 residents that call our communities home and 3,200 employees. This is my 26th year in senior living, and have had the privilege of working on the provider side and the consulting side of things, worked with more than 70 communities during that period of time, and then the past 2 years back on the provider side with Covenant. An interesting tidbit is that my mom actually lives in the first community that I did pre-sales for in 1990. So it's a nice full circle for me in this industry, and glad to be on the phone with all of you today.
Great, and I'm Jamison Goslin. I am principal of Jamison Marketing and Communications. I kept the brand name real simple for that. I focus on lead generation, lead management, sales alignment, and also brand and some crisis communications work for multi-site companies working in the aging services space. Particularly senior housing, but not only senior housing. I come by way of Sunrise Senior Living, Alpha, which is now Argentum, Holiday Retirement, and prior to all my work in the senior housing and aging services space, I worked at an old telephone company called MCI, which many of you probably remember, and I focused on public relations there, technology, and a few other things. So Angela, I guess we turn it back over to you to help moderate this conversation.
Thanks to a team that's got almost 60, almost 80 years of experience among us. And we'll be joined in just a little bit by Bob Berg, who is the Executive Vice President of Moves for Seniors and the sponsor for today's discussion. So let's start where all of us have some expertise, and that's with marketing. Jamison, I know you've got a lot of experience helping communities really target their approach to attract the right kind of buyer. Can you talk about how you're really helping communities to connect with the person who's a right fit for them, not just for any senior living community?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a question we probably don't get often enough because we're always so focused in the weeds on just trying to get that next sale. But it's a very good strategic question. And I often answer it by starting by saying, well, who are you in terms of the type of company you are, the type of values you offer, the type of product you offer, where are you positioned? So understanding who you are first and foremost, and how you are positioned in the marketplace in which you operate. Understand the market conditions around you. and who the general customers are today that you are serving in your community. Those are critical to understanding who then you should be trying to attract to your community from a targeting standpoint. And you can actually even reverse that in many ways if you are looking, rather than position, if you are looking to reposition your building. So clearly understanding who is in the market that you want to serve as opposed to who you are serving today, whether you want to invest more dollars into your product and expand it into a higher end senior housing or enter into memory care. All those sorts of questions revolve around who is in your market today. So the first thing that I would recommend, I want to keep this simple for folks, is, look at your CRM. What is the information in your CRM today? Typically, some companies have a lot of good data, very robust data within their CRM systems that they can pull out. Find a good data partner that you can work with, whether it's through your direct mail house or through other channels. There are a lot of marketing agencies, marketing firms, and people that have great, robust systems that can take that data, slice it and dice it in all sorts of ways to help you better understand what your data is telling you and how you should segment your data. So segmentation, next thing, critically important. Demographics. We all pretty much know the demographic piece, the age, all the sorts of stuff, male, female ratios, all that sort of good stuff. Socioeconomic, critically important, right? Are you targeting the right people that they can afford the services and products that you're offering? What does that look like in your marketplace? One of the things we often hear is, oh, we should target around a 15-mile radius. Now, anybody that has driven 15 miles from an assisted living property, depending on your market, it might be reasonable or unreasonable. So you have to think about that. We often talk about the radius around a certain property, and think about your market first. In Portland, Oregon, 15 miles is like a whole nother planet for us. New York City, Los Angeles, no. You're probably looking at a much tighter 3 to 5 mile radius. So what I would say is, rather than focusing on the radius necessarily, focus on zip code analysis, right? So you have great zip codes that you can look at from both the lead gen and from your move-in databases. Where are the people coming from? Which zip codes, right? So you can pull that information into an Excel spreadsheet and even do some simple analysis on your desktop yourself. So that's the second thing that I would do, is that zip code analysis work. But again, a good data analysis agency can help you with that. Because the third thing that I want to say is, start focusing on psychographic information. We always focus on socioeconomic, we always focus on demographic, but we're not doing enough on psychographic information. And that is where we really better understand why people are choosing the lifestyle that our communities are offering. So I would really recommend that if you have the data and connect with a company that can append psychographic information to your data, then you can also begin building profiles of the types of people that are really interested in moving into your communities. And so psychographic information is first and foremost, is becoming more and more important, because we are a relationship-oriented business and we are a lifestyle-oriented business. And when you see hospitality and these more transactional businesses already doing this, we've got to really start focusing on that sort of information to help us market better. Angela?
Thanks, Jameson. I'm just actually thinking of a community that we work with in Medford, New Jersey, a Land Continuing Care community that's an arboretum campus. They've got great walking trails and access to the Rancocas Creek for kayakers. And so we've segmented their direct mail list, and you can do some of this digitally as well, to identify gardeners and kayakers and hikers. And we've really seen great results in targeting the lifestyle they offer to the kind of person who already shares those values. So appreciate your input on that. So we all know our customers are spending more and more time online. In fact, 81% of affluent older adults have a smartphone now, and 57% of all senior living searches, not just searches by adult children, according to the Pew Research Center, start online. Jay, I know at Covenant, you've really developed a pretty sophisticated approach to nurturing those connections to the community online. Talk with us about where you're finding success.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. At Covenant, one of the advantages to size of the organization that we are is we've made a significant investment, and we've been very intentional about building out our digital marketing in-house expertise. So literally over the last 2 years, we've brought out all of those resources internally, and built out the team from some of the best in the senior living, digital marketing space. And so we're really blessed in that regard. Currently, we're drawing about between 50 and 60%. It can change market to market, as we talked about in those various markets that we have communities in. 50 to 60% of the inbound lead generation is from online tactics, and the balance being mostly from targeted direct mail, as has already been talked about with Jameson and some of the same strategies. We still believe that direct mail has a key role in overall lead generation, but year over year, digital tactics are really generating more inbound leads than anything else. So as a way to be most effective in that, we used to approach online marketing as a digital strategy. We really refer to it really as its strategy, but it's now in a total digital world, because all of our tactics that we now deploy, whether it be targeted, sometimes print advertising, sometimes targeted campaign-related broadcast media, all have a connection to a digital tactic. So our direct mail are integrated with landing pages and e-alerts and remarketing tactics to really maximize response rates, and we track all this stuff very specifically through some of our own proprietary platform tracking mechanisms. And so we can tell you that we have about a 20% increase in our response rates to events because of coupling that offline tactic of direct mail and some sort of invitation along with an e-alert or a landing page. And so 10 years ago, online strategy related mostly to having an effective website, and everybody would say, yeah, but our seniors, the people who are looking for this, really aren't online. We know that that's not true, and statistics prove that out. Today, though, our focus is really about creating unique experiences for the different personas of the people who visit our sites. Some are visiting for themselves for information, seeking information. Some are searching for information to help others in the process, and then some are just trying to get educated. Effective search engine optimization and search engine marketing is going to allow, your people that are inquiring or engaging with you in a digital platform. It enables them to find you at the right spot. So if they're only looking for information about healthcare, they're going to find that directly. The worst thing is to have people bounce rates surely increase when people don't find what they're looking for. And we find that in the opposite of most retail environments, and we have specific data to prove this out, we know that if you're Amazon, you want people to stay on the site as long as possible. Our approach in senior living is really the entire opposite. We want people to come to our website, if that's the way they're engaging with us, get the information they're looking for us, and then and either sign up for something or engage in a way to further the conversation. But we will tell you, the more time people spend on our websites, and we feel like they're done pretty well, the higher the bounce rate is. And so we want people to go and convert when they get to the website, convert to an RSVP, convert to a next step, convert for signing up for some e-newsletter or something like that. But again, it's really creating the unique experiences so when people are looking for information, they're finding it, and we know that people interact with our digital tactics differently. We're actively engaging with some of the tactics. Obviously, I mentioned effective SEO and SEM, search engine optimization, search engine marketing, but clearly pay-per-click is still a big driver and still very effective with us. Remarketing tactics and some newer approaches that we're doing that are focused on geo-targeting, which is specifically, putting ads to specific zip codes and specific areas through digital platforms, as well as geofencing. So we can actually serve up ads for our community when we know someone is at our competitor communities. And it's fairly sophisticated. It's retail people do it to us all the time. Many people are like, how do they know I was right near this car dealership? How did they know I was? Well, that's all geofencing, and it's stuff that we're doing and testing and seeing some traction with. One of the things we're doing, we've just implemented for one of our campuses in Connecticut, is it's near a fairly well-trafficked area. Sometimes it gets a little bottlenecked at rush hours near Hartford. And we've actually done some advertising on Waze. It is super inexpensive, so any of us who've used Waze as a GPS mechanism, you know you can actually, you get ads on there as you're stopped in traffic, and ads will pop up. It's interesting the reach. Now, does everybody see it? Are they gonna respond to it? No, but it's a cumulative effect of just being top of mind, and that coupled with something else they see can drive response. So again, we look at it's really strategy, the marketing strategy in a digital world. Everything you do, offline or online, needs to be connected to a digital tactic. And we feel that it's an integrated approach to be successful. It's not just all direct mail like it used to be years ago. It's not all digital right now, but clearly the two have to work together in order to get the maximum response.
Thanks, Jay. And you've talked about, creating that, both you and Jameson talked about creating that really customized experience for the customer. A lot of us now are taking that information about their digital journey and funneling that into our customer database. And that's really helping us make a more customized experience on site. And Julie, I know your team has put a lot of work in at Traditions into really making the shopping experience personalized once someone walks in the door. Can you talk about the training and coaching you're doing to keep that happening effectively?
Sure. You mentioned relationship, Angela, and we are in a relationship business. We must build relationships, the customer before us, you before me, in making an emotional connection, because people buy feelings. This is an emotional decision, and the bigger the decision, the more emotions come into play. And what's more emotional than this? Making such a big decision that affects who matters most. Great sales begins at the initial inquiry. I'm often asked to train on closing or in hiring. We need closers. We need strong closers. Absolutely. But what we really, really need is strong openers. People who, and it takes practice because all of this sounds really common sense simple. And it is simple, it's just not easy. And it's not as common as we might think. The sales process begins at the initial inquiry. Slow down, listen, ask important, open-ended questions. Meet your customer where they are emotionally in this process. And how do we know that? Because people don't come to you telling you where they are emotionally, but we need to listen, we need to reflect. And in doing this, making an emotional connection or beginning to, in the beginning of the relationship, you're much more able to advise to a next step that makes sense, literal sense and emotional sense to your customer. And closing strong is really a series of small steps. And in slowing down, we will shorten the sales cycle. A series of small steps will ultimately yield a move-in sooner rather than later, and not relying on that one to come in and who does it today. And we love those. They do happen, but we can't rely on those. Those are a tenth of our business. We must rely on and develop our sales skills or relationship development and practice.
Agree. Great points, Julie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bob, for joining us. Excited to have Bob Berg with us, who is the Executive Vice President of Moves for Seniors. So you'll be hearing from him a little bit later on as well. So we've got lots of investors and operators on the phone. What are the keys, Jay, at the multi-site level or the operator level or that investor level to really keeping things consistently moving forward with occupancy? What are the key indicators that you're paying attention to?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Angela, earlier, having 16 communities in 9 states and 4 time zones, it creates a number of challenges for us just from a management standpoint. So in any given year, we have to reoccupy or sell about 360 apartments just to keep up with annual turnover. And that can ebb and flow a little bit, but that's a good round number to kind of focus on. So for us, it's a year-over-year challenge that takes a lot of focus, daily focus. You cannot take your eye off the sales ball for a day. A day turns into a week turns into a month, and all of a sudden you're behind your quarterly goals. So it takes intentional focus and, I believe, structure in order to maintain and gain occupancy when you have an opportunity. So for us, we kind of keep it pretty simple, but I think you can apply this whether you're a single site, a small multi-site, or a larger multi-site. And for us, it's about providing the structure for accountability and ongoing coaching and mentoring. So in our rhythm of our business, in some communities where there may be challenges, more challenges than others, sometimes it's daily communication with those resources, whether that's a regional resource or the sales director with their team. It's a daily stand-up meeting with a strategy of reviewing leads, next steps, brainstorming challenges, and really reviewing what are the most effective, impactful sales activities they should be focusing on that day. Now, the CRM should be guiding a lot of that and should be informing that process, but I think the intentionality of having that meeting and that conversation is critical. So again, whether that's if you're a single site and you're a one person show, that meeting with your executive director potentially every day or weekly at the minimum to go through that strategy. If you're a sales director and you have a larger team, again, you have to figure out what that rhythm needs to be for the team. But again, it's that structure for accountability. The second thing, I think salespeople, we all know it's a roller coaster ride with salespeople. I am one, so I can say that. But I think providing clear and concise expectations. So yes, do we have targets for and measurements for calls and appointments, move-ins, and all those corresponding ratios that we want to measure? Yeah, we do. We feel like although it's not a lot of focus on volume, although there is a direct correlation between activity and those sales that happen, and we're really careful not to confuse activity with achievement, because there are people that are that good at that discovery that was mentioned earlier, and ultimately in the closing, that allows them just to have higher closing ratios and more activity, more sales activity. But it's really about ultimately moving prospects through the sales funnel. So that's its first two. The last one, I would say, it's really focus on the quality of the interaction with prospects to move them or advance them in the sales process. I really don't want a continuation of a sales relationship. I want an advancement in every single context. So that means focus on the things that I already know about that prospect. They're going to move them to the next step, having a real purpose for that interaction, whether that's on the telephone or in person. I think a great little quote that I've always kind of held true to myself is, you sell appointments over the phone, you sell apartments in person. And sometimes I hear people on the telephone trying to sell apartments over the telephone. You can't do that. You're building relationships. You're trying to get a commitment to advance to the next step. So keep that in mind. And then the last couple things I would just say, and I think was really critical, where it was mentioned earlier about meeting the prospect where they are emotionally. I think sometimes we also need to meet them where they are physically. And I think we get so wrapped up into it is an experiential product. People have to come to our communities to be there to experience it at some point in time. But we get so focused on, I'm calling them to come see me. So really what that sounds like is, hey, would you like to drive over from the nice home you're comfortable in, and let me try to sell you something you're not ready for? And so sometimes we don't realize that what we're asking them to do is come to sit through something they know they're going to get a pitch. So look for opportunities to meet them where they are, not just emotionally, but also physically. So home visits are super, super effective. I've done them in every area of the country. I don't care if somebody says you can't do them in the North. I grew up in New Jersey. I can do that. You can do that in the South. You can do that anywhere. It's about having an effective relationship to have a really meaningful conversation in a non-threatening, neutral environment. Off-site meetings are also very successful. Coffee, Starbucks, you meet them for lunch. Just remember, not every interaction to advance somebody in the sales process needs to happen at your community. At some point in time, that needs to happen when they're ready to make a decision. But I would just encourage you not to overlook that as a real key strategy. And then just making sure that you're using, as was mentioned earlier, all the tools at your disposal to help inform that process. And that is typically through a really effective CRM system that you can use to help guide those interactions and to help hold you accountable on those next steps and get those small yeses along the way that ultimately get to the ultimate close.
Jay, I appreciate that you brought up visiting folks at home. We call those trust breakthroughs often the things that you learn on those home visits. And I think those are often the most early important advances in the decision-making process, where you really start to get a customer to be honest with you about their hesitations. And Bob, I know at Moves for Seniors, you all actually take a really intentional approach to getting to know someone when you go to their home. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing and how that's helping communities move people forward?
Yeah, Jay has brought up the whole area of the in-person visit. One of the things that we've introduced over the past year or so that's been a real eye-opener for us with seniors and their families has been the use of video technology. When we introduced video on-site technology into our business, which is the moving and downsizing of the seniors' life really into Senior Housing Next, we didn't know for sure how the seniors and their families were going to react to it. But I can tell you that they really do appreciate the ability to connect through the technology with you, face to face. In our case, we walk through their homes with them, often tying this to their remote sons and daughters and grandchildren, trying to find out how they live today, finding out what they want and how they want the downsize to occur. And what are they trying to accomplish tomorrow when they move into your communities? Now, where does this fit in maintaining and onboarding and occupancy? Well, oftentimes during that video walkthrough, we see, we hear, and record certain things that are near and dear to the senior that may not have been really thought through or accommodated during the transition and initial discussions about your communities. It could be anything as simple as a hobby that may be enjoyed by the senior that is not fully understood or appreciated by the community, or the fact that Fox News may be playing in the background on their TV, and that means something. Let me give you a real life example, for instance, of what's happened with us earlier this year with one of our moves. It was a customer, we'll call her Mrs. Jones, and she was moving from Florida to North Carolina to be near one of her daughters. As we did the video walkthrough tour, she was pointing out what was being moved to the community, what was being shipped to her other kids in the Midwest. And then we came across her art studio, which she emotionally indicated to us that was going to all be placed in the storage. These were beautiful artwork benches, easels. She had paint and supply storage area that was pretty cool. But in any event, this was a red flag for us. Predictably, as was the case in this situation and happens many times, the result when we see these things, what oftentimes happens is that a few months down the road, after that move-in, the same senior is calling us for a move-out because the community failed to understand the importance that she was an avid artist. All of her stuff was in storage. She found no one in the community like her with the same passion. She felt lonely. And she was telling us all this in the follow-up. And she had a real sense of loss that her physical manifestation for art couldn't be accommodated and was moving on. These things are picked up during these video walkthroughs of homes. So it really does provide great value to the industry. And the last thing I wanted to pass along is that we have found that our close rate as a business has improved tremendously through the use of video technology as we handle the engagement and enhance our relationship with the seniors and the family through the use of the tool. So as a group that supports the senior housing industry, we would encourage everyone to really look at video as an interesting concept to use to supplement what your organization is doing to connect with your customers. We found it very compelling and useful in our servicing of seniors and the senior housing clients. Angela?
Thanks so much, Bob. By the way, I should mention we'll be taking some questions at the end of today. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. So if you've got those, please submit those, and Eric will be helping us to traffic those during the session. I want to move from that shifting to really that move day that Bob talked about, Julie, we know the first few days in the community are critical to long-term resident satisfaction and in some cases satisfaction for their family as well. What's your approach at Traditions to assuring a successful integration?
Well, really acknowledging that sales doesn't stop at the move-in, because again, it's all about the relationship. And during stand-up or alignment, as we're meeting intra-team, the communication is always who is moving in, who's moving out, and who's at risk. And typically at risk might be someone on hospice or maybe someone moving to a different geographic in the country. But truly, our at-risk residents are our new residents. This is such a delicate time for our new resident to really acknowledge the magnitude of what they're going through and what they continue to go through and how scary it can be. And a welcome, a new resident with a welcome basket, and that's great and absolutely necessary. But what systems are in place ongoing for the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? More and more statistics are showing that our move-outs are coming from residents within the first 90 days of occupancy across the country. And that's a scary statistic. And the whirlwinds of our day-to-day life and working in a community, and it can be great, but we must focus and stay organized and communicative with what's happening, what's in place, again, for our new residents. Going back to the relationship, and Bob, you mentioned the story about the artist. That makes me cringe. How did we not know that not only that art was not only important to this woman, but it's who she is? How did that go missing? So, starting with that relationship, continuing with that relationship, intra-communication, intra-team. You must have a system, though. I get teased about my checklists, but we got to stay organized. We have to have a system. We can't rely on our memory or, oh, yeah, of course, we're going to do this. In the end result, of course, is what we all are striving to do, and that is to serve our residents, our older adults, and their families. That's what we're all in this business to do. And what's more important than a very, very satisfied resident and one whose needs are met, physical needs and emotional needs. And so not only does that bring us the greatest satisfaction, them the greatest satisfaction, but they are the ones who are more likely to refer us business.
Yes, absolutely. You're right about that. And you talked about that checklist. I'm also probably hated for checklists, Julie. But with Solutions Advisors, our VIA program is one of the first programs we take into a community when we go in to take over management or managing a brand new community. And it brings those systems to a checklist and survey for the resident at 7 days after move-in to really assess what sunk in, because we may have told them so much on move-in day, but there are things that need to be revisited, or team members that they haven't met yet. They don't understand how their housekeeping works or how dining reservations work or those kinds of things. So our 7-day survey and 30-day survey have really become critical checkpoints for really early feedback for us. And I think we can't overestimate how important that early feedback, those early online reviews in the sales process even, are critical to connecting to resident referral down the road. Absolutely. And Jameson, I know you've had an opportunity to help teams implement great resident referral programs. What are some of the components once you have satisfied residents in your community to connect them to referring their friends, which we know are one of our most high closing referral sources of move-ins to our communities?
Absolutely. Yeah, Angela. And, one of the big questions that we get about resident referral is often, when should we start? Should we put it in the initial marketing packets? All that sort of stuff. And I always look at it as we should be promoting our resident referral programs early and often. Now, it doesn't mean you have to advertise it, announce it through speakerphones every day, all that sort of stuff. No, you can do a very soft sort of approach to it. However, we do know that resident referrals, if you have an effective program in place, resident referrals are often a critical indicator of the services and the experience you're creating for residents in the building. So if you feel like you have a promotion in place, take a look at and start talking with your residents as to why they might be referring or not referring, because that will better allow you to look at the services that you're providing today, and maybe there's areas of improvement that are required in the services. But as for the promotion of resident referral itself, start with a whole home approach. Resident referrals and asking for resident referrals isn't just the salesperson's responsibility. It is the executive director's, it is the dining person, it is the activities person, it's everyone's, because everyone should be interacting with the residents each and every day. And that's an opportunity to both soft promote and develop a more hard-hitting promotion around resident referral, whether it's a quarterly contest, a monthly contest, something that they can experience and have fun with. Resident ambassadors often also like to get involved with resident referrals. They usually have some of the best ideas related to contests and promotions to help generate more resident referral leads and ultimately help convert those leads to move-ins. That's one of the reasons why resident referral is often one of the best sources of leads for most properties, because it is a real experiential thing. It's people who know people. It's that sort of thing that is why we often want to focus on resident referral, and the other side being obviously professional referral as your grassroots marketing initiatives to grow your lead base, because those are your best converting leads. They're usually not the most voluminous, but they are your best converting. Lastly, I would also say that in addition to developing a quarterly program and having the whole team at the table in the development and the support of that program, I would also say, make sure you soft sell the program that you do offer, whether it's the check or the monthly incentive or whatever it might be. Make sure people see that the people who are sending resident referrals are being recognized, because people often like to be recognized. Ensure that the resident is the type of person that likes to stand up there with the big check or anything like that. But, recognition goes a long way to continuing to market your resident referral program and promote it. So think about those sorts of things and how it's applicable to your community and to generate those really good, strong resident referral leads and helping convert those leads into move-ins. Angela?
Thanks, Jameson. I'm going back to something Jay said earlier in our conversation about strategies are neither digital or traditional, they're strategies. And I think resident referral is a great example of that. Lots of us for years have hosted housewarming parties and we've moved postcards and done the more traditional marketing stuff. But I think we've never been in a better position to build a culture of referral than we are today, where we have online review campaigns and social media out there that residents connect to and their families connect to on Facebook. So I think I would just encourage you, as you're thinking about your resident referral program, if you don't already have an online review campaign for your community, that's the very beginning of your program in many cases, because people who aren't even residents yet are looking at how they give you positive feedback. So really think about how that endorsement factor that we know is so important today in social media and digital marketing becomes tied into your resident referral program. Jay, I think so many of us as operators, or at least I find as a consultant, a lot of operators don't really have a great handle on planning for their attrition. You talked a little bit about how many turnovers you fill every single year. How do you stay on top of that back door at Covenant and planning to refill those vacancies?
Well, we first take, we keep pretty good, I think we have pretty good data tracking those things, and so you can kind of see patterns as it pertains to turnover at each campus. But we also take a little bit more sophisticated approach to it from an actuarial perspective, and so we engage an actuarial consultant. We use AV Powell. But to help us with what we call pop flow documents, so population flow, and it really does give us good actuarial-based data to anticipate turnover. Now, I can tell you there's probably, to be really transparent, there's one or two cases in which you're going to be wrong in a given year. But I think when you look at historical trends, which sometimes have all different factors involved to it, but then you also look at actuarial data, it helps you better anticipate what those that turnover will be in a given year. I think the other thing that you really need to pay attention to, because the actuarial data will give you some really good information. Your trends, your historical trends are going to give you more information. But I think it's also really important to pay attention to your single occupancy. So the pop flow documents that we do that are actuarial based don't really address, all right, well, that person is that age, they're living alone in that apartment, not part of a couple. So I think when you take both of those factors, historical trends, actuarial data, and you also look at single occupants, you can kind of see, I think, with pretty good plus or minus, maybe a couple percentage points about where you'd be in turnover. That then drives a lot of the planning as it pertains to budget allocations, lead generation tactics, and then depending upon what inventory becomes available, whether that's easy to sell, hard to sell, drives a lot of sales strategies and tactics as well. But for us, it's both based on science, not really science, but based upon some facts from the actuarial perspective, based upon historical trends, and then looking at that single occupant perspective, because I think that's truly where you'll be most prepared and not caught off guard that, oh, we thought it was going to be 30 turnover and you had 36, because that can clearly impact all the financial metrics that are key drivers into a lot of the operational stability.
Thanks, Jay. We've really talked a lot about how we move occupancy, move the needle up, how we maintain it. I want to talk a little bit more just about move day. And I know I've found senior move managers wildly valuable, especially in startup situations where you're doing 30 or 40 moves a month. Julie, I know you've also had really good experience with senior move managers and the role that they play in really the revenue impact of driving move-ins to your community. How do you plug that person into the role, and what have you found valuable about them?
Angela, there's a lot of value in with a move manager and continuing that theme of relationships and customer focus. A move manager, the relationship between the sales counselor, the community, and the move manager, and certainly the move manager and the family, really helping to navigate that maze and keep focused on the logistics as emotions are in overdrive during this time. And there's so many, maybe multiple family members and so much going on and so much emotion helps keep that sale moving forward, advising what are the literal next steps, what are the emotional next steps to help reduce canceled sales, people getting cold feet, because again, the sale does not stop at the deposit, doesn't stop at the move-in, but that move manager, again, is that advisor, that person that can help us see the forest while we're in the trees. Personally, this year, my father, I was an adult child, my father moved to one of our communities at Traditions, and as long as I've been doing this, it is different. It is different when you're the adult child. And really, even for me, kind of knows a lot of the logistics, but for me, having a moving advisor, someone to help me would absolutely be game changing.
And I think we've seen those game changing experiences where I know I've had move managers when they get into a home that's for sale and the home sale has been the barrier for the individual to move in, and they identify some things that need to be changed in the home so that it can be a more saleable property. It's given us the opportunity to re-enter those conversations with residents of the future and their families. And Bob, I know you've had the opportunity a number of times over the years to sort of keep things from going off the rails. Can you share some experiences with that?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Angela. I'm going to bring up a particular move that occurred in the past year with us. Barbara. Barbara is a 92-year-old who lives in Southern California, and she had no family in Anaheim, California, and she had decided to move clear across country to be near her great niece in Western Pennsylvania. Barbara had signed a lease for to move in about 3 to 4 weeks. Several days before her scheduled arrival, she called the community to delay and possibly cancel, as she just fired her movers because of an unresolved dispute over packing, and was really at ground zero, both physically and emotionally. Barbara tried to manage this on her own, but she fell victim to the general conditions present in the moving industry. The community, happened to be one of our corporate partners, asked her to call us to get things back on track, keep her schedule intact, which was for her to fly out in 4 days, and importantly, keep the lease from blowing up. We arranged a cross-country move, including moving her car, all of her worldly possessions. Barbara had lived in her home for 30 years in a 4-bedroom home. It was massive. And, you can imagine everything that she had, with very, very little downsizing, unfortunately, that had taken place. We had to arrange storage close to her new senior living community in rural Pennsylvania. And there was a host of other details, incredibly important, but they're all too long to mention here because I know we're up against time. So we're happy to send out to everyone on the call a case study detailing Barbara's move and everything that went into it, including the ending to this story. The point here is, does your organization have the infrastructure to handle the complex downsizing needs and even emergencies that happen with today's baby boomers and some of the remnants of the greatest generation that are coming into our properties? We encourage you to read Barbara's story and think about how your organization would handle it. Angela?
Thanks, Bob. I know in my years of opening and starting communities and opening expansions, I have seen at those critical times when you're opening a new wing of a community or repurposing a neighborhood in a community, the way a move manager can multiply the efforts of your team members, so your sales team members can stay focused on those new relationships, and that next sale has been a lifesaver. And I look at the financial impact that it had for communities that I've worked with and think we couldn't have accomplished what we did without some really key partners who know your building. They know how to not screw up the finish of the brand new elevator. They know the entrances, they know the exits. They know that if you ask them to finish a move in a half day because you've got another move arriving, they can make it happen. And I know I've seen a lot of stress reduced on my operations team and my management teams and maintenance teams because of having a great partner who knows the community inside and out. Can't say enough about how meaningful that's been. Eric, I think that we may have some questions from the audience. I've got lots more here, but do you have some questions that you'd like to present that are coming from our listeners?
Sure do. Thanks, Angela. This one is for Jameson. Can you talk about the use of CRMs in senior living and some of the benefits and challenges?
Yeah, sure. So, there are obviously a lot of providers of CRMs out there. You got the Cadillacs and you've got the BMWs and you've got more of the Ford Focuses and things like that too. And all of them can provide very good value to you. Obviously the more expensive CRMs, the bigger ones that, global companies use. I'm not going to name any brands, but you typically should have an IT department that can help you with the integration of that, because they are much more elaborate, whereas the more affordable options typically can come right off the shelf and allow you with a little bit of customization. Now, the use of CRMs obviously is a critical piece to tying in a lot of information and keeping that information, especially if there's turnover in the building. It allows a record of all the leads that you have been receiving and all the information that's been coming in with those leads, and to allow a future salesperson or a temporary salesperson that might be filling in for a couple weeks to pick up where someone may have left off. So that's number one. Number two is the data that can come from that information when it's aggregated and sliced and diced. A lot of CRMs feed into data analysis systems, or even it can be downloaded into Excel to do some easy desktop analysis work on leads, lead sources, all that sort of good stuff. Thirdly, it can also help you with what we were talking about earlier in this conversation, which is understanding the position of your community in the marketplace, and being able to take all that information and market it out there. So appending the data with other information that you may not have collected during discovery. And the other thing is, in today's day and age, when we talk about digital marketing, especially, a lot of CRMs easily tie into marketing automation systems, which allows you to do automated email marketing or even manual email marketing, frankly. And all of those tie-ins and all of that data comes in through email marketing and through the marketing automation programs that can also tie into direct mail houses and all this sort of stuff. Basically, the bottom line is it streamlines and simplifies a lot of the manual work that salespeople have to do today. But you do have to work with your CRM partners to get there. And I would also say it is a great best practice to sit down and think about with your team, what do you want out of a CRM and what would you do with the data and how would you analyze it? Because all of that information can help guide a good CRM company in putting together a proper proposal and then a good solution to allow you to effectively create more ROI because you have that technology in place. Eric? Back to you, Eric.
Thanks, Jameson. This question is for Jay Hibbard. As a seniors housing company with multiple properties, would you set your website up as one management site with subsites, or is there more value in setting up individual sites for each property? If individual sites, how would you tie it into the management site?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it probably could be debated on both sides of that. I'll just give you some just perspective of how we approach it. We approach it from that people, it's kind of like all politics are local, so is senior living, and so we do believe there's value in having individual sites for each campus, although there needs to be a relationship to both. So there is a connectivity to be able to navigate from the individual community site that's more focused on kind of the nuances of that marketplace and what the advantages of that local area are. But there's a way to connect into the greater organization because there may be another child in another state where we have a community and they didn't know about that. So there's a way for them to connect and engage in that way, and vice versa. So you have to be prepared as a multi-site that it depends on how people search as to where they're going to end up. So if they search, for that area and you're looking for a senior options in that area, you hopefully are going to get one of our communities very close to the top of that list, or in a pay-per-click environment. But then also, if they're just Googling or searching for covenant retirement communities or faith-based communities, we should be there and be able to drive them to the corporate site, so to speak, that helps them navigate to a location closer to them. So we believe that you really do need to have an individual website for each community and to showcase its own individual personality, but there needs to be a connectivity and a way to navigate back and forth. And so you're covering all your bases depending on how people might find you online.
And Eric, this is Angela. I would agree wholeheartedly. My previous 18 community system, we went from a single site to multiple sites. I think the thing a lot of providers don't consider, they think about how the website's going to be set up, but Jay's exactly right. You really have to start from the customer search strategy and make sure you've got a really strategic approach to search in every locality, because very few of us are considering moving more than 10 miles from home to a retirement community unless we're considering moving within 10 miles of our kids. So location is such a driver in this decision. The customer's experience with location when they search really needs to be the beginning of planning that strategy with your website developer.
Great, thanks, Angela. Last question is for Julie. Julie, can you talk about the increased need for services for resident pets and activities for their grandchildren? It seems like these two areas are becoming more important to our seniors.
Sure. Well, I don't have grandchildren. I have 2 pets, so a subject near and dear to my heart, and certainly one to our residents' heart as well. And we'll close actually my theme about relationships. So what's important to our residents should be important to us. And pet therapy and being around pets has been proven to lower blood pressure and be good for us physically and certainly emotionally. So what are we doing to be pet friendly and to also be aware of residents, people that don't like pets? So being, honoring everyone's, as much as we can, desires. We offer dog walking. So it's because and again dependent, and I agree on location and being community focused. So it does vary in different geographics, but for those communities that are kind of dog heavy, if you will, it's very important to our residents. So why not? Why not walk their dog? What does it take for us? The question's always, what can we do? How can we make this happen? And certainly with extended family and grandchildren and those who are related to us and who are like grandchildren, intergenerational opportunities, both formal and informal. Like I said, my father just moved in and we're blessed. My daughter gets to see him all the time, and now she's 15. She's volunteering to be with the other residents this summer while she's on summer break. So critical to everybody's emotional health, and what can we learn from one another, and seriously, without sounding hokey, be one large family.
Great. Thanks so much, Julie. Why don't we turn it over to Bob Berg of Moves for Seniors for the close?
Thanks, Eric. Wow, what a powerful session that we hope gave you some practical advice on areas of focus. We even gave you a little bit of homework to read Barbara's story, some things you can work on back in your shop, and some resources that you might consider to help you get the edge in improving your occupancy levels in the coming months. With over 30,000 new units projected to come online this year, you're all going to have your work cut out for you. Feel free to reach out to any of the panel members for additional thoughts and bounce ideas off of us. Our team at Moves for Seniors is proud to have sponsored this marketing, moving, and maintaining program discussion. And we'd like to thank our esteemed panel, and a big thank you to Angela Green-Urbacheski for moderating, and the Senior Housing Business News Network for their leadership in the industry. This concludes our session. Have a great rest of the day. So long, everybody.
Thanks, guys.